Our topic today is about carers' rights, and the plan is that by the end of leaving this event, we'll know what our rights are and why they matter, that we'll have been encouraged that it is possible to use those rights, and we'll leave with that all-important step of action about how we're going to take our own steps. And that might be we need to go and research getting some more support, maybe with advocacy or some other support. Maybe there's some specific rights you're going to want to find out a bit more about, or maybe there's a step or something you need to follow up where you've realised that, oh, hang on, my rights have not been upheld here. And of course, hopefully, there's a spot of uplift as well. Let me introduce you to my guest. Hi, Jamie, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Do you want to give a quick intro who you are and where you are?
So my name's Jamie. I'm the head of projects and services at the Brain Charity. I think we'll talk a little bit about the Brain Charity later, but in a nutshell, we are a national charity that supports people with neurological conditions.
But in the meantime, I just wanted to start off with a brief summary of what our carers' rights are. And I've got a lovely graphic that's been prepared for me. So rather than me waffle on too much, I'm going to keep it focused with a lovely little presentation here. So carers' rights and the law. What are our rights here? So as a carer, it can be hard to know our legal rights. It's not something we carry around with us, a little booklet or something. So it's good to be reminded, even if we've been doing this for a long time. So here they are, summarised, and you can come back to whenever you need. So there's a whole page of content on carers' rights with all of the details. So we'll share that link in the Mobilise Hub afterwards. And Monday's email next week will feature that, because it's Carers' Rights Day coming up next Thursday. So the right to choose. So it can seem a little bit hard to understand, but as hard as it can be, we do have the right to decide if we are willing and able to provide care. This isn't something that can be forced upon us or that we have to do just because we're married to someone, or just because we're someone's son or daughter or the closest relative, or even because we have power of attorney. We still have the right to choose if we want to care and how much and what type of care we're able to provide. We have the right to engage in things like employment, education, training and leisure. So the right to a fulfilling and normal life, the same as everybody else. The right to a carer's assessment. So the carer's assessment will help us to identify what we want from our life and the impact of caring on our well-being, to help us manage that impact of caring and get the support that we need. The right to request flexible working, so that it's a request that you can make formally with your employer, and to have that considered, really, to look at things like compressed hours, part-time hours, different start times, different working location, etc. as well. So that'll be dependent. Every job will be different about what flexible looks like, but the right to request that flexible working. And the right to have your views considered. So carers' views should be heard by social services when organising provision for the cared for, and that also includes at the point of hospital discharge as well. And we also have the same rights as everybody else, and it's important not to forget this, that we don't just have carers' rights. Those are in addition to our rights. So we have the rights as defined by civil rights and human rights legislation, and any rights associated with the Equalities Bill. And a newer one over the last couple of years, if we're working, the right to carers' leave. So the Carers Leave Act gives employees up to 5 days unpaid leave to support those we care for. So 5 days is based on working full-time, but that may be more shorter if you're working part-time. So the equivalent of 1 working week. So knowing our rights empowers us to thrive. Being aware of what they are and when they might show up, and being able to sort of link back to them can be really powerful. Sometimes we're kind of keen to know a little bit more detail, and there is more content on the Mobilise website, but a lot of them come back to the Carers Act, the 2014 Carers Act if you're in the UK, the Care Act, the 2014 Care Act if you're in the UK, or the Carers Act 2016 if you're in Scotland. So these are pieces of legislation with lots of detail in them about providing care and about support for carers, and that's where the carers' rights are based from. Most of those things that you'll find there. There's been recent legislation around carers' leave as well. Right, let me bring Jamie back on and let's hear a little bit more. So Jamie hasn't come here as an expert in carers' rights. I think that's I'm not sure those people quite exist. It's more, well, they do exist. There are legal experts in those things, but most of the time in the sector, it's about, well, what different support services are there that can help us and that can help to sort of smooth the way a little bit and come alongside us and amplify our voice. And Jamie, when I met Jamie, I'm amazed to hear just the breadth of conditions your charity covers and the range of different services you have, and that there's a combination of sort of local and national stuff. So let me hand over to you first of all. Tell me a bit more about the work of who the Brain Charity are and what they're up to and how they might be able to help carers.
Yes, so we are a national charity, as I mentioned, and we support people with neurological conditions, and we offer practical advice, emotional support, and social support as well. One thing before I joined the charity, I had absolutely no idea how many conditions are under the scope of neurological. For anybody who doesn't know, it is 600 plus. So that can cover things like a stroke. It can cover things that might have been present at birth, so cerebral palsy perhaps. It can cover degenerative conditions such as dementia, and it can also cover things that might have happened as a result of perhaps an accident or a bleed on the brain that's then left somebody with brain damage that has then affected their ability to communicate, their cognition, their emotional regulation. So it covers an awful lot of stuff, but it also covers neurodiversity as well. So that can include autism, ADHD, and learning difficulties. When you put all of those things together and you also remember that we support the person themselves, but also that person's support network, which of course involves carers, their friends, their family, when you put all of that together, I think most people would be quite hard pressed to find anybody who probably doesn't qualify for our services. So it really is a big scope of people that we aim to support. And ultimately, what we'd like to do is empower people to live essentially healthier, happier, and longer lives, fulfilling their potential, and reminding people with a disability or those that they care for that life may have changed, but it doesn't mean that it's over. It means that we move forward with what we've got, and we do so with, the best of our ability and empowering people to speak up for their rights. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are national, but we have a very local reach as well. So what we do is we try and offer something a little bit different depending on where you might actually be able to access the support from. So if you're national, it doesn't matter where you are in the UK, you are still entitled to support from the Brain Charity if you have a neurological condition, or the person that you care for, your family member, your friend, if they have a neurological condition themselves. So nationally, we have a telephone helpline, which is open from 10 till 3, Monday to Friday, and the number's up there on the screen. You can call that number up, and we've got an advisor who's available on the line. And what they'll do is they will talk to you about whatever problem that you're having, and they will try and troubleshoot it there and then with you. Sometimes we end up being able to kind of answer the question quite quickly. And then great, that's brilliant. Sometimes it might take a little bit more thought, or we might need to signpost you elsewhere. We may need to get back to you with the answer, but essentially we'll always try and help you find the answer there and then wherever we can. If you might find, using the telephone difficult, or those sort of restricted hours of between 10 and 3 are a bit more difficult for you because you might be working 9 to 5, then we also have an email support service as well, which again is up there on the screen. So if you email info@thebraincharity.org.uk, you can put in there some detail about what it is that you're experiencing, and then we'll kind of communicate backwards and forwards by email. We can send you links, useful information that you can then refer back to at your own leisure as well. And another thing that we have as well is we've got some practical information packs. So say, for example, you are wanting to go on holiday, but you're caring for somebody who might have a disability, which means that you're quite restricted as to where you can go. We have a holiday information pack that's got some providers in there for you. It's got some advice around getting things like insurance for people who might have a long-term condition, which can be quite difficult at times. So if you're national, that's the kind of support that you can reach out to us for. If there is anybody who's joined us who is local, so we are in Merseyside, we've got plenty of things that you can get involved in if you can get to our centre. So our free neuro gym is one of those things where you can access PT and physiotherapy. We've got a community cafe, we've got counselling and psychotherapy services as well, and we've got some employability support networks too, where you can engage with a confidence coach and look to get into some employment activities or volunteer activities. Just depending on what it is that is as a value to you, then you can sort of engage in that sense. So just wanted to cover both bases, just in case we do have anybody who is local to the centre and would love to pop in and see us. We'd love to see you.
But Jamie, one of the services you talked about, and I think might be really helpful in this context of carers' rights, is an advocacy service. Can you say a little bit about what an advocacy service does?
So we are commissioned, so we get funding from lots of different pots and we do different things with that funding, just depending on what it is that we're funded for. One of the things that we do, and this is quite geographically restricted, but on behalf of Liverpool City Council, we run a carers advocacy service. And so anybody who is a carer, they can tap into our advocacy service, and then that gives them access to quite in-depth support around navigating their rights and what to do if something isn't upheld, or if it is being upheld but it's just a difficult process that they're going through, then our advocates will walk alongside of that person. And really local authorities, depending on, I mean, everywhere across the country should be offering that service. It's just the one that we offer is quite restricted. But, you know, that said, we're still able to offer advice and support and maybe connect people with their local carers advice network. So if you sat there thinking, oh, I had no idea that existed and no idea where to start, just because we wouldn't be able to offer that service directly doesn't mean that we can't help you to find the right agency that can do that for you.
Oh, that's really great to hear. And I think sometimes the whole world of advocacy can be a bit of a mystery. And we might think, well, I'm kind of, I should be able to stand up for myself and things. But the fact that a service is specifically commissioned for that for carers recognises that this is a time in our life or moments in our caring situation where we may just need someone to come alongside us, make it a bit clearer, help us to amplify our voice, which I think is really lovely to have someone else on our side. So if people are thinking like, well, where's mine? Your local carer support service may be the ones that are commissioned to provide that service. So it may be at your local carer support service, and they may do it formally as an advocacy service, or their support workers may just act as advocates and be able to do that with you. Or there may be a separate advocacy service that is for everybody that as a carer you can also tap into. So worth looking at those things. So the 2014 Care Act and the 2016 Carers Act in Scotland give you the right to a carers assessment. Now in Scotland, it's called a carer support plan, but a carers assessment will also end up as a carer support plan. So there's some subtle differences, but essentially we talk about them in a similar way. The first thing is that may be provided by your local council, or it may be something that's sort of commissioned out to your local carer support service. And it isn't really an assessment, actually. It's not thinking about how well you're doing as a carer. It's assessing the impact that caring is having on you and how it might be preventing you from meeting your needs. So with work, education, access to leisure, your health, your ability to look after your home, your ability to be able to care for children, and the kind of the wider you around that caring role. So a carer's assessment can be quite a formal process, but it might be quite light touched, and that's part of the Care Act, is that it's making it appropriate and proportionate to your situation, and everyone's a bit different. So it might start with an online form, it might start with an appointment with a social worker, it might start with a telephone call with somebody at the local carer support service, but it starts mostly a little bit of data collection, but also with a conversation, and the conversation can be one of the most powerful parts of the carer's assessment. Get yourself ready for it, because they will talk to you and listen and understand what's happening with your caring situation. And as a result of that conversation, there should then be a summary which is shared with you, which you approve, and then a support plan. Now, the bit about the sort of entitlement bit is the support plan may be for information and advice. A carer's assessment doesn't always lead to a payment or a direct payment. It sometimes does, if that will help you to meet, if you have eligible needs and it helps you to meet your needs. So that's the bit where sometimes there's a thing about eligibility for that sort of full end of the carer's assessment that looks at direct payments, but everyone is entitled to a carer's assessment to start that process of the conversation and to have a support plan that will point you towards the right things. Do check out on the Mobilise site, we've got our new dynamic carers assessment tool, which is one where you can start a conversation straight away with an AI bot. It will listen to you, ask you the basic questions you'll be asked during a carers assessment, and provide your summary instantly and give you that information and advice support plan pretty much instantly, but via text message as well. So we're trying something new there. Lots of carers have been using it. Over 200 carers have used it so far. So that getting help in the house can be a tricky one. Some councils they see that as an easy way to support people and have a sort of a domestic support provision in that way. And it can be complex. Is it part of your parenting role or part of your caring role, or is it just what you need? But I think it's there in the carers assessment. I think that's a good place to bring it up in your carers assessment about how the caring is having an impact on you, and therefore that is difficult. So I think that's a key thing to make sure you cover in your carers assessment, and be ready to think about how you would talk about that impact. The other route to look at it is, as well as a carers assessment, is a care needs assessment. Is what support does the person you support need, because you are not able to provide it and you need someone else to provide it. So sometimes that can be the starting point, and sometimes carers are pointed quite quickly towards that, and they may have missed out on their carers assessment. But sometimes that's right, because first you may need to look at the eligible needs of the cared for person. What are their overall needs? What's the overall care? And then as a carer, kind of how do you fit into that package? I think that is part of it's a little bit chicken and egg, isn't it? But that is part of the overall caring plan. So I think care needs assessment is an important place to look. But then a care needs assessment, there will be a financial assessment to determine who pays, which is really tough, because just because we decide we would like some help doesn't mean that the person we care for doesn't have to pay for it. But if we kind of, again, thinking about it like that if they need help, then it's their financial assessment and they may need to contribute to it, is sometimes some of the bits that help, as well as making sure we're getting the right benefits that may help, such as attendance allowance or PIP, or the Scottish equivalents, or carers allowance to support us as well, to help out with some of those things. Those benefits are never the answer to the full situation, but sometimes those are part of the thing to have a look at. And a carers assessment might look at those things if you've not already explored those. But quite often, by the time people reach their carers assessment, they've kind of explored those things as well.
And I think sometimes as well, when it comes to sort of troubleshooting problems like that don't have a very sort of specific and defined answer, like getting help around the house, sometimes a little bit of thinking outside of the box can help. So we've had clients who've passed through our carers advocacy service who we've not been able to kind of secure things like a cleaner to come in for them and kind of do that sort of stuff. But what we did do was look into the cared for person's past employment history, and their former employer had a benevolent fund in which we were then able to apply for a grant. And we couldn't, usually grants won't pay for kind of ongoing, sometimes they will, but they won't pay for ongoing support like a cleaner coming in, but they might pay for something like a washer dryer combined that takes a little bit of pressure off you, where you just put it all in one place and it does it all for you, and it just takes a little bit of pressure off you. And if you can do that and kind of bolster your support with those little bits and pieces. And somebody in the chats there just mentioned Turn to Us, which is a great resource. So I would absolutely recommend using that to look for any grants that might be available. But sometimes thinking outside the box, and again, reaching out to local charities who might have some ideas that have worked for them in the past. It's always worth trying. If you are thinking about engaging an advocate, to try not to be too scared of the process. I think one thing that we hear at the charity quite often is that people think that engaging an advocate means that that person's going to come in and they're going to make all the decisions for you, and essentially you're going to be cut out of kind of what it is that you're doing, which is caring for somebody that you love most of the time. And I think what I would say is, advocacy isn't that. It's there to amplify your voice, to empower you, to make sure that you know your rights, make sure that you're aware of what options are available to you, and then helping you to articulate what it is that you want and what it is that the person that you care for needs as well. So I think if you're thinking about doing it and you're feeling maybe a little bit anxious, a bit nervous that it might kind of trigger something that you didn't want, I think I would just ask you to just try and go for it. And if it's not working out, if you've engaged in advocacy service and you think this is not working out for me, it doesn't lock you in. You can say, okay, this has been great, but no, thank you. You know, that's fine. You know, it doesn't tie you into anything. So yeah, I would say go for it.
But thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the tech support, guys. Take care. We'll see you over the Mobilise Hub. Bye-bye.